You found the Live Local Marketing Podcast, where business owners share their knowledge about what's working in the market today. No fluff, just their experiences and stories from people who are making it happen. And if authentic, practical marketing resonates with you, be sure to visit livelocalwarmmarketing.com and learn to grow your business on warm marketing referrals. Now, on to the show. Welcome. Thanks for joining us for the Live Local Marketing Podcast. Today, we're with Sawsan. And ma'am, how are you feeling today?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
This is going to be a good one. We've already had all the excitement and a little bit of off-camera stuff, so I know this one's going to be a good one. You are full of energy, so this is going to be a fun one. Let's do a little bit of background, and we'll get right into the questions. So Sawsan has had over a decade of B2B SaaS marketing. He's had quite a unique career path, transitioning from physical security to cybersecurity and now into marketing. And she doesn't just specialize in creative growth hacking strategies to drive revenue for B2B technology and SaaS, but she lives and breathes it. She uses logic and data to drive decisions, never ever stop testing or refining it. Ma'am, are you ready for the questions?
I'm so ready. Born ready.
Let's do it. Let's do it. The first one, talk to us about a time you had a loss that turned out to be a win.
Yeah, so actually there's so many different examples in marketing, and if anyone says otherwise, they're definitely lying. But I think one of the more recent examples that I love is I inherited some strategies from the person before me. And what they typically used to do is try and encourage people to come on to group demos as live webinars where they just showcase the product. And I noticed that session after session, the numbers were quite static and quite low. And there's a lot of effort that goes into producing these demonstrations, as in addition to that, also the promotion that goes behind it as well. And so I had an idea to do different use cases. So rather than doing a big demo of the product, why don't we show different use cases so that if someone does sign up, we know what problems they're actually interested in. And actually, as soon as we did that, registration started to climb and quadruple. And the other thing that we noticed is that people were registering now for multiple sessions, not just one. When we did the generic group demos, what was happening is people would sign up for one and be like, okay, I kind of get it now. But there's only so much you can show in a 20-minute demo. And so when we actually framed it around the use cases, we found that the number of registrations were climbing and the number of attendees were climbing as well. So I think it really does go back to thinking about what actually matters to your audience. Because if you frame it as we're doing a group demo, that sounds like we want to show you our product. But if you're trying to market to someone, you have to think about what's in it for them. There's going to be hundreds of webinars, hundreds of events, hundreds of articles. Yeah. Why should they spend 20, 30 minutes of their valuable time? They're very busy people. Why would they spend that with you? Whereas if you're very niche on a specific problem, tackle that head on. And then when your sales team follow up, they already know what the problem is going to be that they need to follow with. So I think for me, that would definitely be my main one. So think about your audience always.
Did that change the prep time though? Like if you're doing a specific, before you could just prep and you have a generic talk, now you're doing very specific niche. I'm assuming the prep time didn't change a ton, did it?
No, because the sales team do these demos all day, every day anyway.
Yeah.
So the only thing that was changing is we were able to show more of the features related to that specific problem. Whereas when you try and show too much, it's like if I always say, if you're trying to demonstrate Microsoft, where do you start? Word, Excel, PowerPoint. But if you know that someone's interested in presentations, you show them just through that segment. So it just makes it a little bit easier for the salesperson and the person that's watching.
That makes sense. Complete sense. That's great. All right. So talk to us now about, aside from that one of the other favorite strategies that you're using now with some of your clients to help them with their marketing.
Do you know what? A lot of people, and I see it all over LinkedIn and it makes me so sad, they say email marketing is dead. Email marketing is not dead. You're just doing it wrong. And I hate to say the newsflash, but it is. And actually, I think there's 4.6 billion users of email. Email is still the strongest converting channel. I just think that people have completely lost touch with it. Some of the issues that I see are people either overdoing email, sending something that's super generic, super boring. Yeah. And the first one is ChatGPT slop. They just go, ChatGPT, write me an email about blah, 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 blah. That's not how you win at email. Email, sometimes you might have really small segments. You have to think about who am I actually sending this to and what do they need to know, rather than what do I need to say what's the most people I can send it to. So the way that I approach it, I might have, for example, a webinar coming up or a demo or something that I want to share. I might send 4 different versions of that email to different people, positioning it in a way that's relevant to them. And I think one of the things that really makes me a fan of email is it's so instant. I can see what the rates are, the open rates, the click-through rates. I can see what the response rates are. It's all very easy to track. So I'm always aware of how it's performing. It's super easy to A/B test. And I think for most people, that's such an underutilized or overutilized channel to the point where it is almost no longer effective. But I think if you are, again, just coming back to your audience all the time, thinking about why would they interact with this email? If I received this email, what would make me interact with it? Because I know sometimes I'm going through my emails and certain things stick out to me. I try and take note of that. Why did this stick out to me? Why did I take the action they wanted? And how do I make my receivers feel the same?
So if you have your open rates and you notice some people aren't opening it and you're A/B testing it, do you use the people that do not open those emails as part of that A/B testing to follow up with different kinds of emails? A quick break before we get to that next answer, because I know that answer is going to be brilliant, which is why I chose this moment to interrupt. If you love what you're seeing and you want to run your business off of warm marketing referrals, visit our website, livelocalwarmmarketing.com. It's got valuable resources, office hours, memberships, the book, an array of resources to help you get rid of cold calls, cold leads, door knocking, and run a business you can be proud of through referrals and warm marketing. Now, back to the show.
I do. I think that's such a good A/B test to do. And also with email, sometimes you don't do one email, you do multiple. So for example, if I'm sending an email about a webinar, I might then send another email about the webinar, but the ones that haven't opened it, I would send them a different message because clearly the first subject line or the preview line, yeah. But one of the things that I'm actually testing right now, which I saw someone on LinkedIn say, don't use emojis in your subject line, use it in the preview line. It's more likely to get attention. Mm-hmm. And so that's something I've been testing, and actually I've seen it work quite well. But again, it's around continuous experimentation and testing.
That's a great answer. All right. So what of the process do you still do hands-on? I'm there. What stuff do you pass off to a team or VA or AI?
Yeah. So I think there are some things that are super, super important that you keep hold of. So for example, in terms of things like email, that's definitely something that we keep in-house. You have to know your shortfalls. I think it really depends on the person and the team that you've got. So for example, if you do have a designer, then that's great. But like, for example, my team doesn't have a designer. That would be definitely something we pass off because visual communication is just as important as the written communication. Yes. And there'll be times where, you've written a really great blog, and sometimes, having a visual or an infographic will really boost how people interact with it. For me, I think having someone that can support with that is super valuable. We also have tested, having agencies for ads, but actually we found it more successful when we've kept that in-house. But again, I think it really is dependent on the team you have and the skill set that they have. For example, one thing that I see a lot of people pass off is their website management, right? Which is definitely something that I think is useful to have. So for example, I have a team of technical people that work with me, they're outsourced, and they help me with website. I put together the copy, I tell them what I want, how I want it to look, and then they'll go and build it. That's something that's quite time consuming, but from the SEO side of things, again, that remains with me because I should be the one that knows the audience best.
So when you get with the people and you're making emails, you're making marketing, you're making content, you obviously have to get into their brand and you have to make it super specific. You've already mentioned that. How do you pull out the story, the brand with your clients?
I love this question because this actually relates to one of the best pieces of advice I ever received. And it's a lot of marketing teams actually decide on what content we should produce. I think that, and it's going to be very controversial. It always is when I say it, but I think it needs to be with the sales team. And I say that because the sales team know what questions are asked most, what the challenges are most. Yeah. They know the terms that are being used, the keywords that are being used. And this is even more important now that search engines are moving to solving questions, because that's what you need to be writing for. I used to work for a company where we used to have so many blogs, hundreds, maybe thousands of blogs. There was a few that performed best, but they were nothing to do with what we did. And I remember when I came in and I reviewed the content strategy, I said, we need to just take these blogs away. And I said, but we'd lose 70% of our traffic from the top 10 blogs. And I said, but these topics that we're writing about have absolutely nothing to do with what we sell. So if anything, just creating traffic, sending vanity, like it's a vanity metric. We get 100K visitors, but those 100K are probably like students, or they're people looking for perhaps how to get on the dark web. We don't sell anything to do with that. So
yeah, that makes sense.
So why would we do that? So I think the best way to think about your branding is, what are your audience searching for? What is the language that they speak? How do you find that? Now, in the UK, for example, and in the US, sometimes you are allowed to record calls. Now, analyzing those calls with AI, finding what those keywords are, frequently asked questions are, taking that into your marketing and actually creating FAQs is a really powerful way to build it out. And then just building on and elaborating on that, I would say once you've got those keywords and those frequently asked questions, you could then branch them off to do internal linking with longer form blogs. And then that way you can really go into more depth.
That makes, and I've never had anybody say, talk to the sales team first, and that's how you pull out branding. That's a very good answer. So when you sit down with the sales team, and this moves into our next question, they have data, they've got information. What do you consider useful data when you sit down with that team and pull out the branding and talk to the sales team?
Yeah, I say this because a lot of marketing don't actually speak to the customer, the prospect, or the lead. Now, I did when I was in sales, but when I came into marketing, I lost that connection. I think some of these questions are things that sales can help with, but I think you need to listen to the recordings, analyze the transcripts. And I think where we talk about useful data, that is such a powerful one. There's other, a lot of companies, particularly in B2B SaaS, are looking to get third-party intent. I always say, don't. Very simple, save your money. There's so many pieces of first-party data that you should start with first. And if you feel like you've completely exhausted it, then go ahead and look at third-party data. But don't dismiss your website traffic, for example, which accounts are visiting. Don't dismiss how people are engaging with your emails. If you see people are opening and clicking, they're the ones that are most engaged. Look at your socials, who's following, who's not. We recently analyzed some of some companies' followers, and about 10 to 15% were only ICP fit. Everyone else was job seekers, competitors, employees. And so, even though social does have a good reach, are they the people that you are really trying to reach? And so again, it just comes back to looking at what data you have and trying to make sense of, what does this tell us and how can we change our strategy based on this data? For example, if you have customer surveys, what are people happy with? Focus on that and focus on if there's things that they're not happy with. That's how you need to build out your product roadmap, because otherwise, if they don't renew, you're going to be in big trouble.
That was going to be my follow-up question, especially since you seem very extroverted. Do you do polls? Do you go out and make conversations with them directly? Do you do those things to get customers engaged?
And do you know what? One thing you should not be 100% polls, 100% surveys, but one thing you should not be afraid of is feedback. We had a CEO once that held a customer event, and he was like, let's all just talk about the product. I want to know what you find valuable and what you don't. Great thing to do. And as soon as the customer started sharing feedback, he started crying. And it's like, was that not the opposite of what we were trying to? We have to be open to receiving feedback. And if we're not, we're always going to be limited by how much and how fast we can grow. Because sometimes you do get emotional and passionate about what you're doing. But ultimately, you need to be passionate about what the customer problems are. And that's where you need to solve. I'll give you just one quick example. I see all over LinkedIn, people are complaining about HubSpot. Hey, make sure you fix this. Hey, fix that. Hey, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? HubSpot are doing all these cool AI things that nobody cared about. No one's asking for, nobody's using, and nobody's finding value in. Meanwhile, there's got a list of fundamentals that we need. And I mean, I'm not saying they completely ignore it, but their focus is elsewhere. So, and by the way, I do love HubSpot. I'm a big fan.
Put a plug in, see if we can get a sponsorship. Let's go.
There we go. But it's just one of those examples that I think is useful to bear in mind, because if you are going to build a product roadmap, it really needs to be based on what matters.
So now let's move into, you probably have many examples of this, but what processes and strategies don't you do anymore? You're like, hey, there's no ROI. This doesn't work. Stop doing it.
Do you know what? I love this question because, again, my answer for this is very controversial and I've learned it a lot along the way. In the past, when I've done marketing, I've tried to be very prim and proper and iterate and iterate and iterate and search for perfection. But actually, what people appreciate more and what resonates more and what gets more engagement is not polished content. People love seeing the backstage, gossip. They love seeing things in motion. They don't like just to see the end product. They like it to be humanized. They like it to be raw, real, relatable. And so even with my email marketing campaigns, even with my ad campaigns, I try to be humorous about it. I try to be likable and relatable. Memes are so good. You can use them in absolutely any setting, right? I'm a big advocate for memes, emojis, even though, AI overuses it. You do need to use them in moderation. But I think the days of trying to be so polished are gone. And I'm happy about that. And it's because even in B2B, we are selling to people. Even though we're selling to businesses, there's humans within them. And so if you are able to relate to them on a human level, they're more likely to respond. And I think a lot of people do talk about, personalizing content by saying, hey, first name. That's not personalization, right?
Yeah.
Or, we've seen companies in your industry, blah, blah, blah. That's not personalization, but you can still be human and relatable in the way that you frame things. And I think that's why our open rates are so high. I think that's why engagement rates are so high. You'll see even companies like HubSpot, you'll see companies like, there's so many examples actually that companies are starting to show more homemade content, things that are just filmed on their phones. And it gets so much great engagement. And I would just encourage anyone to do it because it's so easy to get started.
That plus in this AI, as AI continues to grow, it's showing people you're putting the time in and not just letting AI do it for you, which is so cheesy. Lazy. And people don't love lazy. They want hardworking people.
Exactly. And I think it was really cool when it first came out, but I think it was like so overdone so quickly. People are like, nah, let's go back to what's real.
Yeah, nothing ruins marketing like marketers.
But I'll actually give you a very fun fact. Even OnlyFans was originally made for that. It was made for like artists and musicians and celebrities, certain elements of their life, because everything is so accessible now. You can put it on Instagram, you can put it on YouTube, you can blog. But the best way to monetize it is to put it behind a payment. Obviously, it then branched out into other things, but
it's got a little out of control.
It shows that people just want to see a bit more and they want a bit more exclusivity and access than what they previously had. And I think B2B is the same.
That's awesome. That's a great answer. All right. So you've done a lot of different things. You've been in a lot of different industries and now you're working your way up. Let's talk to us, the audience, about confidence, like how you grew and built the confidence. What advice would you give them about having confidence to do their own thing?
Yeah, the first answer is delusion, right? You've got to be a bit delusional. But no, and on a more serious note, I think as with anything, when you're trying new territory, you're stepping into it, maybe you're trying a new thing or a new challenge or a new approach, a new channel, whatever it may be. I think the best thing to do is start small. I think a lot of people jump in the deep end with big investments, and I've seen that fall flat. For example, with things like ABX, trying to target specific accounts, the best thing you can do for yourself and your brand is start small, find your champions internally. So for example, in marketing, you might want to find a couple of people in the sales team that may want to support, or a couple of people in leadership that might want to be thought leaders. You might want to find a couple of people in the the CS team that maybe owe you a few favors, but find yourself some champions that can help you build out a case and prove that this concept is going to work. I think sometimes you build out these elaborate strategies and try and then communicate it to the whole company and say, hey, we're doing this, blah, 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 new process, let's go. But you haven't actually proven it's worked.
Yeah.
And so by starting small, building the champions and getting them excited, show them what actually moves the needle. For example, I remember at a company I was at, They had tried 3 times to launch ABX programs. They had tried to, it sounds simple in theory. You have a target accounts you want to go after. How do we go after them in sales marketing together? And it had failed 3 times. And the reason was they hadn't had a good way of approaching it. So what I did was, instead of doing it with them, I just took one salesperson and one thought leader, and we did a campaign targeting only 600 people. We had over 50 people respond with 12 meetings booked, and we had opportunities from it. We ended up closing one of our biggest deals. So then when you go and tell the rest of the company, hey, this is what we're trying to do, this is what we achieved with just the 3 of us, everyone is so excited about it already, because they're like, you guys did that in that time. And then they want to see how you did it. And then they have feedback and suggestions and go, oh, could we do it this way? And it's kind of like, well, yeah, of course we can. Let's give it a go. But that's how you bring people on board. You don't just dump something on them and go, this is what we're doing now.
It's good. You have such practical solutions, and you're always thinking outside the box. You're seeing what people are doing, and you're seeing why they're doing it and why it works, and then you're just taking it in a different direction and make it more practical, which is what I like about this conversation. It's so easy too. People need to stop. Why is it working? And reframe it, just like you're doing. That's wonderful. All right, so we're gonna have you do the outro and talk about your business and how can people get a hold of you to get more information and come up with outside the box ideas like you've been going over today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Billy. So I'm known to be an oversharer. I'm known to overtest things. I'm known to be really curious. And so everything that I do kind of blog about it on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to know more about what I'm testing, what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, or the memes I enjoy the most, do follow me on LinkedIn. I am very active on there, constantly looking for new ideas, and I don't trust what people say. So I always test it myself, and don't trust what I say, test it for yourself. So it's just a nice little community that I've built. So if you want to be part of it, feel free to give me a follow or drop me a message. I can talk for days.
Nice. That's awesome. All right. And so before everybody probably wants to know, what's the name of the dog and what kind of dog we have here?
Oh, he's so cute. He's called Kano, and he's actually a lot on my LinkedIn posts as well. His name's Kano. He's half Rottweiler, half Staff. So he's just a giant baby that cries a lot. Awesome. But he looks so scary. Like, people see him across the road, but he is scared of his own shadow.
Nice. That's nice. All right. Awesome. Thank you for all your ideas. Make sure you follow her on LinkedIn. I know I'm going to sign up as well because I need more outside the box ideas like that. So thank you for your time and your help today and your energy. We appreciate everything you gave us today.
Thank you so much.